There is a man you know. Maybe it's your father, maybe it's your husband, maybe it's the guy next door who used to wave from the driveway every morning on his way to work, and now the car just sits there. He retired, could have been 6 months ago, could have been 3 years, and somewhere in the months that followed, he got quiet. Not sad exactly, not angry, just quiet in a way that feels different from how he used to be quiet, like something switched off that nobody can find the switch for. My name is Betty, and I've been paying attention to my generation my whole life. And what I want to talk about today is something that happens to a very specific kind of boomer man, the one who spent 30 or 40 years being defined entirely by what he did, and then one day stopped doing it and discovered that the silence left behind was much larger than he expected. The psychology of the boomer man who became quiet after retirement, how it happened, what it actually means, and whether the quiet is something he chose or something that chose him. Right now, according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, approximately 55 million Americans are retired, and the majority of those who retired in the last decade are baby boomers. The oldest boomers are now in their late 70s, the youngest are crossing 60. And research from the Employee Benefit Research Institute found that roughly 40% of retired men report a significant and unexpected decline in their sense of purpose within the first 2 years of retirement. Not financial stress, not health problems, purpose, that word. It sounds abstract until you understand what it was actually attached to. For the boomer man who worked, and most of them worked, in the old way, the way that meant the job was not just a paycheck, but an identity, the work was not something he did, it was something he was. He was the manager, the foreman, the technician, the provider. He had a title, a schedule, a building he went to where people knew his name and needed things from him. He had a reason to get up. He had a place where his competence was visible and measurable and regularly confirmed. And then he retired. And all of that, the title, the schedule, the building, the daily confirmation that he mattered and was needed, disappeared on a Friday afternoon. And Monday morning he woke up, and the house was quiet, and nobody needed anything from him, and he didn't know what to do with that. So he got quiet too. Here is what the research says about why this hits boomer men so hard specifically. A 2023 study from the Stanford Center on Longevity found that men who strongly tied their sense of self-worth to professional identity experienced significantly sharper declines in life satisfaction after retirement than men who had developed parallel identities through hobbies, community roles, friendships, or family engagement alongside their careers. And boomer men as a generation are particularly likely to have tied their worth to their work. This is not a character flaw, it is the direct output of how they were raised. The boomer man grew up in a household where his father went to work and came home, and that was the shape of a man's life. Nobody sat him down and said your value as a person is entirely dependent on your professional output. They didn't have to say it. He watched it. He absorbed it. He built his entire interior architecture around it. And now that the work is gone, the architecture is standing, but the building it was holding up has been removed, and he is walking around inside the frame, wondering why everything feels so strange. There is a particular kind of man inside this story that I want to be specific about, because he's the one who shows up most often in the comments and in the conversations I've been having for years. He was good at his job, not just competent, genuinely good. He took pride in it. He was the person people came to when something was broken, or when a decision needed to be made, or when the situation required someone steady. He was steady for decades. And that steadiness, that reliability, that being the person people counted on, it was not just a professional identity, it was a moral identity. Being useful was how he was a good person. Being needed was how he knew he mattered. And retirement didn't just take the job, it took the daily confirmation that he was in fact a good person who mattered. So he sits in the living room. He watches more television than he expected to. He says he's fine when people ask. He is practicing the same emotional containment that boomer men have been practicing since childhood, the one where the feeling is present and large and has no acceptable exit, so it just stays inside and comes out as silence. AARP's 2025 loneliness report found that 42% of men over 50 report feeling lonely, and that retired men without strong social networks outside of work report loneliness at nearly twice the rate of working men in the same age group. The work was not just a job. For a lot of these men, it was their entire social world, the colleagues who became something like friends, the morning coffee in the break room, the Friday afternoon that had a rhythm and a ritual. When the job ended, the social infrastructure ended with it. And the boomer man, raised to be self-sufficient and to regard asking for connection as a form of weakness, did not know how to rebuild what he had lost. He didn't know how to call someone just to talk. He didn't have the habit of it. His friendships had been shoulder-to-shoulder friendships, men who did things together, watched games together, worked alongside each other, and now there was no shared activity to stand beside each other doing. So the connection faded, and the house got quiet, and he got quieter inside it. I want to talk about what the quiet actually looks like from the inside, because it is more complicated than it appears from the outside. The boomer man who became quiet after retirement is not, in most cases, depressed in the clinical sense, though some are, and that deserves its own conversation. What he is, more often, is untethered. He wakes up without a reason to wake up at a specific time. He eats without a schedule. He fills hours with things that feel like activity but not purpose. He might watch the news for 3 hours and not be able to tell you what he watched. He might start a project in the garage and abandon it. He might drive somewhere and not remember deciding to go. He is a person who spent 40 years moving toward something and now has nothing to move toward, and the stillness feels less like rest and more like floating. Research from the Journal of Occupational Health Psychology found that men who retired without a clear plan for structure and meaning in their daily lives showed elevated cortisol levels, the stress hormone, for up to 18 months post-retirement. Their bodies were producing a stress response even when there was objectively nothing stressful happening. Because the absence of purpose, for a person who has organized their entire nervous system around purposefulness, is its own kind of stress. The quiet is not peaceful. It just looks peaceful from the outside. And here is the piece that the people who love these men often miss. He is not going to say any of this, not because he doesn't feel it, because he has no language for it. The boomer man was raised in a household where feelings were handled privately, where vulnerability was something you showed to nobody, where the appropriate response to any difficulty was to square your shoulders and manage it. He has been managing things since he was young enough to understand what managing meant, and now the thing he needs to manage is the inside of his own head on a Tuesday afternoon in a quiet house, and there is no manual for that, and he was never given the tools, and asking for the tools would feel not wrong exactly, but foreign in a way that is hard to explain. So he watches television. He says he's fine, and the quiet continues. A lot of you have been writing in about the men in your lives, fathers who used to have opinions about everything and now sit in the same chair for 4 hours without speaking. Husbands who retired and became strangers in a familiar way, still present, still kind, but somewhere slightly out of reach. You're not imagining it. What you're seeing is real, and it has a name, and the name is not depression, and it is not decline. It is a man who lost the primary language his life was spoken in and has not yet found another one. Here is what the research suggests about what actually helps. And I want to be specific because general advice is useless for this particular man. He does not need someone to tell him to join a club or take up pickleball. He needs a reason to be competent again, a project, a role, a responsibility that confirms for him that he is still the kind of person who does things and does them well. Volunteer work that uses his actual skills. A grandchild who genuinely needs his help with something. A neighbor who asks for his expertise. A hobby that has stakes, not just passing time, but building something, fixing something, producing something that wasn't there before. The boomer man's sense of self runs on usefulness. You don't fix the quiet by asking him to talk about it. You fix it by giving him something worth doing. And then, slowly, usually, the talking follows. Because the boomer man opens up sideways, not face to face in a direct conversation. shoulder to shoulder, while doing something else. In the car, on a long drive. Over a project that takes two sets of hands. That's when it comes out. Not because he decided to share, because the situation made it possible without asking him to be someone he doesn't know how to be. Here is what I want to say to the boomer man who got quiet after retirement, and to everyone who loves him. The quiet is not the end of the story, it is one chapter. And the chapter ends when something gives him back the one thing that work used to give him every single day, the confirmation that he is still a person who matters, that hasn't changed, that was never going to change. He just needs a new way to find out. So if you are that man, find one thing. Not a list of things, not a plan, just one thing that requires you and your specific skills and your specific history. Start there. And if you love that man, don't ask him how he feels. Ask him if he wants to help you with something. See what happens. Leave me a comment. Tell me about a man in your life who got quiet and what brought him back. I really do want to know. Thanks for being here with me.